Welcome to Toffee TV. It is the end of season review. The 24-25 season is all done, and it ended on a far more positive note than it looked at various times in the season. It ended, of course, with David Moyes returning to Everton and giving us a bit of pride back, really. I think it was how it sort of finished. I mean, Ped, going into the season last summer, if we go back there, I don't think either of us were too impressed with the pre-season, having finished the 24 season on somewhat a positive note. Everton, Derby win was in there. I think they won 5 home games on the run at the end of the season, having gone months without winning a game. And we seem to have, when we took the points deductions and put them to one side, we seem to look as though we come through a tricky spell. And you were hoping that, we'll start this season in a better place and have a less traumatic season, with it being our last at Goodison. I think that's kind of how we felt going into this season. Yeah,
it definitely seemed like that to me. It felt like we were in a better place, and if it was just a case of taking the end of the season form into the new season. And of course, we only really lost Onana in terms of players in our starting 11, and of course Onana wasn't even in the starting 11 towards the end for every single game. So it felt like there was reasons to be cheerful, and then the pre-season was frankly awful. It just felt really half-arsed. It felt like there was no real. It didn't feel like we were working towards fitness, but then it also didn't look like we were working towards a game plan. So we had these games where it just felt like we were going through the motions. I went to Coventry, and it was horrendous. We just got destroyed. And I know people can say, well, it's only a friendly and stuff, but just being there that night and watching them and thinking, what are we trying to do? What is the plan here? Players didn't seem to look fit. There was no real plan. And actually, towards the end, he stopped making changes because I think he was worried that the game would get worse. Maybe 3, 4, 5, and how that would look. And I just thought it was a terrible, terrible look for us. And
I think we were we done the watch along, didn't we, for the Sligo game? And it was only, you do these games knowing that it's a tricky game because you always want to see Everton play well. But I know that we'd only done like a week's training. They were further along, but the signs were there in that one, weren't they? That Everton were 2 down and 3-1 down in the game, and without looking like a good side. It was only really when we kind of brought Chimiti on and Irabunum that we looked as though we were getting into it. And then we obviously had the defeat at Salford, but that was easily battered away because we were winning with the main team when we made a lot of changes. And you're right, Coventry, I remember watching it on Everton TV, and we got beat 3-0, but we got back. Apart from the opening sort of 15-20 minutes, we were nowhere near their level, were we? And that was worrying.
I just think there was people, you can look at results in pre-season friendlies and go, oh, you're doing this or doing that, or we're aiming to that, and you can. That worried me. That just the lack of. There was just a real lack of urgency amongst everybody, and I know we went on to beat Preston, and I know we beat Roma in the
Roma.
Went on to, and I know it felt a little bit better after those games. But I don't know. There just didn't seem to be. It just didn't seem to be as professional. It didn't feel professional. And obviously playing a lot of local games as well. It wasn't like we weren't playing top sides who were going to stretch us. And as I said, everything just felt really lazy. And I think that led into the season of not being ready, not pushing ourselves, not players not being fit. The stages who we brought in, it felt very undercooked and very unnecessary as well.
I think, if you just we'll move on now obviously, but last summer there was also the 777 stuff had ended. Then it was the Friedkin group. and we all got up for that one, and obviously that was supposed to be bookmarked with the Roma friendly. It felt like that was what the idea was, and then all of a sudden they pulled out, which is what they did do at Roma, and I think we all thought they'd come back, which they did. But then it was John Textor's turn, and he was very batting his eyelashes at Everton, said a lot of really positive things about Everton, which was good to hear after, because it'd just been doom and gloom. And we had that rumbling on longer than we would have liked. But we did bring in sort of Tim Irobuena, which was a curious deal at the time, but I think he's a good sign. I think he's got loads of potential. Illiman and Jai, which people were a bit underwhelmed with. We can talk about him as we go on. Onana went out, like you said, with Harrison on loan again, things like that. The squad did really only lose Amadou Onana from what was the starting 11. But I think a big thing that hurt Everton early on was Jarrett Brandtwaite. I'd had a minor operation, but he didn't have it straight away, and it all dragged on. And I remember over in Ireland, he'd done an interview and he was walking again and starting to train. The hope was he'd be ready, but then he just all of a sudden disappeared from him, because obviously he picked up a reoccurrence of it. So we went into that Brighton game a little bit hopeful that we might be able to bring players in, but knowing the takeover stuff was up in the air. So there was that air of flux as we opened the season with two terrible results. Really.
Tarkowski was injured as well, wasn't he? But was playing on it, so it obviously it wasn't helpful at all, and obviously the net obviously it was a bit more, by the time the season started, people weren't feeling as positive of maybe where they were in the early parts of the summer, when we thought that the deal would get over the line, and everything just felt up in the air, and the demeanour of Dyche, knowing that it was going to be his last season basically no matter what, which I think was a big part of it. And we just started slowly, as we have done the last few years, which whether people believe in pre-seasons or not, I always feel like if you get your pre-season right, you start the season in a good positive way, or if you bring your players in at the right time, you start in a positive way. And like everything, it just felt like we dragged our feet on bringing people in, and then when we did bring people in, the manager didn't put them into the team straight away because he wasn't convinced, and we brought Brien in, and he's not getting a look. And then we've got the right back situation where we're down to the third and then the fourth, and we ended up people are saying, well, why didn't you play Dixon in the pre-season game against Roma when there's a chance that he might have to play? So he doesn't, and then the following weekend Spurs he has to start the game, and it was just like those little things like that where it's just like, what do we do? We look so unprepared. We really do. We brought Tim Irobuena in and was like, the plan, obviously there was sort of special circumstances of why we brought him in. And then it was like, are we going to send him on loan? Oh no, he looks all right. And then it's like, you're starting Premier League games. It was just, I just felt so unprepared. We felt so unprepared.
It's chaotic.
For a guy who, isn't that supposed to be like his stamp?
Well, but we start off with 4 straight defeats, conceding 3 goals in every game. 4 at Tottenham, 3-0 Brighton, 4-0 at Tottenham, 2-0 up against Bournemouth with 5 minutes to go, get beat 3-2. Go to Villa, 2-0 up at Villa, get beat 3-2. And we're in a terribly desperate situation. Personally, I'd have changed them after Bournemouth. I think it was done after Bournemouth, and that was August. The Villa game was terrible. Then we did get a little moment of release with a win against Palace, and Dwight McNeil scored 2 good goals, behind in that one, but scored 2 good goals, and one at Ipswich, and all of a sudden it was like, can we start now? Brandtwaite came back in for the Palace game. We got a victory, but then he was injured again, and
I think in Jai in the cup, when he played in the cup and he scored
Doncaster, wasn't it?
In the cup, I think that gave everyone that little bit of lift of like, this lad looks like a player, and it allowed the fan base to put the pressure on the manager to start get him in the team, and he did get in the team, and obviously he never really looked back once he got into the side. So that was a little bonus, and obviously he got the goal at Ipswich, didn't he? And
key goal as well. That was.
So that got us up and going, and I remember the Palace game because I remember the Palace game. I remember thinking to myself coming out, even after the defeats, I was like, we're going to be all right because everyone's telling me how good Palace are and we've just beaten them. Yeah. And even though for the first half we were terrible, I just remember coming out that thinking we'll be all right because there's other teams who... And they didn't have a great start either, and obviously... But I thought, well, you know, the 3 promoted teams come up and here's another team that haven't had a good start and I thought we'll be all right after that. It didn't necessarily play out like that as such, but you could tell he was other teams. We weren't like cut adrift.
No,
we weren't cut adrift from those other teams, like Palace.
We just didn't kick on nearly after Ipswich, though, did we? That was the problem. You know, you get a first home win, that's out the way. You get the first away win, that's out the way. You know, and I think the big dark day for everybody was Southampton away. You know, hadn't won a game, and we go in, it's dreadful. And they were dreadful the day they beat us. And I remember after that game, the manager saying, I've come away here thinking we might have been able to win that game. And I honestly could not believe what I was hearing. You know, we might have been able to win that. Yeah, mate, you were playing against a team that haven't won a game, who were dreadful. You might have been able to win it. And then West Ham, a week later, we got a decent point. We drew 0-0. But I think a lot of people, there was a lot of rumours, obviously the Freaking group, around the Palace game had agreed to buy the club, and that was ongoing. And there was a lot of talk at that after that West Ham international break, that the manager was about to be changed. David Moyes was mentioned then with a couple of others, but he wasn't sacked. He was allowed to carry on. And only really, you know, we had the Wolves victory between that Ipswich game and Christmas, which was a real weird game, the Wolves game. You know, we got destroyed at United, which was, you know, they weren't very good and he beat us 4-0. And then we played Wolves on the Tuesday night, and I know everyone was worried the week of the derby, and we come out and Wolves managed to look worse than we did. And we did. We scored 4 that night, and we had 2 disallowed as well. So, you know, we had the ball in the net 6 times, and we could have scored more. And it was a weird game because it was off set pieces, but there was still an air that everyone knew what was coming. With Sean Dyche, everyone knew that he was about to be, you know, he was getting sacked no matter what. The Freakins weren't keeping him, and once it went through, and you know, the Liverpool game was called off, and then we got a good point at Arsenal, you know, and we end up with a good point at City, and all of a sudden you're going, and Chelsea at home, and you're like, well, we've played.
I think there was 2 ways to look at it, wasn't it? I think by the time we got to Christmas, I think we'd only lost 2 games in 14, something like that. But it was just draws. It was just all draws.
We hadn't scored in that.
No, it was just all draws. But it was like, that's the thing. It's like, from the outside, the positive spin was, well, he's not losing games. But we got beat by Southampton, and that was the day, basically, that I was like, publicly, I was just like, sack him now, get rid of him. You know, to come out afterwards against a team who hadn't won a game of football and say the things he said, we could have got something out of that. And be like, all we had to do is step up. Just like, and then go to United, who were rubbish, and we were just like leaving us the way we played, trying to play with a high line. And
you remember he said we were excellent for 31 minutes. And things like that.
It was a good 31 minutes, though. I'll give him,
you know, and he'd already made comments about Goodison. He had no respect for Goodison, really. He sort of said them, doesn't make plays any better.
But it was just like that. It was just like that feeling of outside the club, people going, well, what do you expect? And then that started drip feeding into the club, though, like, and into the fan base of like, these are what you expect? These are terrible players. Like, you know, we obviously see all the comments, and it's like, but we're not, though. We're not this bad. We're not. This is a team that's capable of scoring goals if you create more chances. Of course it is. Every football team would be the same. But like going to, you know, you know, trying to make sure there's no damage, and like, you know, Brentford at home, them being down to 10 men and not doing it, and them looking more, and they hadn't picked up a point away from home. And then ended up like it's a 0-0 and being like, I'm almost happy with that. United rubbish, and we get battered by them, and it's just like, and then obviously, as you said there, it was those 4 games the Liverpool game gets cancelled and it feels like you just like, you can take a breath, and then obviously picking up three draws, and obviously we rode our luck in some. Chelsea, I think we should have beaten. I think we should have beaten Chelsea. I think we broke Chelsea that day. Manchester City away, we obviously come from behind and scored, didn't we? So it felt like a good one. But then you go into Forest and Bournemouth games that you looked at and going, we were Forest. We were absolutely. Let's be honest, we were destroyed. We were destroyed by Forest.
They just played in. They didn't get our sweat. They didn't break sweat. They just kept us at arm's length, goal in each half, and that was it. Job done. Something which we ended up doing with David Moyes later on the season. But we got to that Bournemouth game, and I think everyone knew he was getting sacked. Everybody knew. The Freakins were in then, and Bournemouth away was absolutely terrible. It was terrible, and he'd run out of ideas. And he went that week, and even though some people, I think, were proclaimed surprise at his sacking, I think most Evertonians knew he was done. And we had the moments of Seamus Coleman and Leighton Baines in the dugout for the Peterborough game in the Cup. Which was
again, it was very interesting because, again, it comes off the back of those 3 draws. So anyone on the outside of the football club is like, you've just got 3 draws against three of the best teams in the country, and you're like, yeah, because that's what we're good at. That's what we're actually good at. But then you go to Bournemouth and you don't basically have a single shot, and when you go 1-0 behind, don't even try and score a goal. But it's all right because we put Harrison Armstrong on at half time. And then obviously he had to do the press conference on the Tuesday for the Peterborough game, knowing he'd been sacked, basically. And it was like, there was a few moments in it where he sort of piped up a little bit. Going,
the veil slipped, didn't it?
Yeah, it was like, you don't know how difficult this is. I mean, I'm still waiting for all the books.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for all, because all he did was cry arse all season about everyone didn't know. And it was mad, because he literally could have said whatever he wanted and no one could have held it against him, because we didn't have an owner. We just didn't have an owner. The whole club was in flux. He could have said anything he wanted and he would have been applauded by inside the club and outside the club, and he didn't. He chose to keep quiet. But by keeping quiet, yous don't know.
Because he just done enough to dangle it.
Yeah. Yous don't know how tough it is. Well, tell us how tough it is then. Tell us how tough.
I'll have a go for 5.5 million this year.
Tell us how tough the job is, because and then it was all like, anytime what do you think? Maybe bring another coach. Nah, let's not forget
Gary Birtles.
Let's not forget Gary Birtles and the rest of the 1978 Forest team that he spoke to on a weekly basis, apparently,
about shooting.
Honest to God, the shite that come out of that man's mouth towards the end. But also it was hilarious. Like, because it's just again, I'll go back to people online or people comments or people on the radio or experts telling parts of the fan base that they were wrong for suggesting that Everton should be trying to win games of football. It was hilarious.
We did have some though who did have a go.
Oh yeah. No, just saying.
No, Everton. Sorry. People in the pundits who were like, this is terrible. Like, I can understand Everton. And the most damning fact was there was not, out the last 11 games he managed Everton to score a goal in 9 of them, and that's just so much so that he gaslighted some fans into thinking this team couldn't score a goal from open play, and people actually believed that because he told them.
But he gaslit parts of the media as well, No,
but they're his mates.
He gaslit loads of people.
But anyway, we had Seamus Coleman and Leighton Baines in the dugout for the FA Cup game. We won the game. Harrison Armstrong played well in that, actually, and had an assist, didn't he? Beto got a goal. The fella who he'd reduced to tears on the pitch, and other players who you could tell just hated playing for him. And David Moyes was reinstalled as the manager, and he came in, and that press conference, his very first one, I think he dragged the football club off its knees and the fan base off its knees. And he had a day with the players, and we played Villa. And I remember coming out the Villa game, and I remember someone stopped me. He was obviously a Sean Dyche lover, and said to me, "Nah, it's almost like it wasn't the players, because Villa had just been a third place Villa." And I said, "We've just created more chances in that game than any of the last 10, mate. We'll be all right. I said to them, I said, we'll be all right, but I'll be looking for you in a few weeks. Yeah. I never seen him again.
I've never seen...
He went back under the stone.
I've never seen a weirder scenario with the fan base.
No.
I've never seen so many people dig in for someone who did so little.
Yeah. And he was a Liverpool fan, by the way.
But I wouldn't even want to throw that in the mix.
But the point being, went to war for him.
I honestly have never seen parts of the fan base dig in for someone who gives so little back, just based on the fact that he came in and we stayed up.
Frank Lampard, he didn't do a better job than Lampard.
Okay, well, let's just park that for the moment.
No, he didn't. The whole season he comfortably done a better job than Frank Lampard. But my point is, Lampard had, in my opinion, a more difficult job to come in and pick the club up after Benitez, and he kept us up. Dyche's done the same.
War managers.
But Dyche is a better.
No, I'm saying.
But the whole season he done well.
Yeah.
But he didn't give anything to the fans. I don't understand it.
No, I don't get it.
My mates and people I talked to couldn't have him for a second, but there was a vocal amount online who couldn't see him do any wrong, which I thought was a bit mad.
Well,
But then I suppose they were worried, which is fine.
That was his own. That was his own doing through very, very clever manipulation, and he's done that, and we've seen that since, and we've seen the evidence of like that you mightn't have seen before, but now you realise it. He is very, very good at gaslighting people. He's very, very good at telling stories and making people think that what he's saying is the truth, and they don't know what they're talking about. Because he's the expert, and don't get me wrong, some of it was very true in terms of like how he put perspectives on things, like some of being managers and saying, being a manager is the only job where everyone thinks they can do your job and all this kind of thing. Yeah. But loads of it was just absolute nonsense that he got wrong. Like he just basic little things, and then going in like, no, some of the stuff he'd say, and then he'd get the media were like, didn't have a clue how to sort of, because of his he'd say things and then go, I'm only joking and you don't know, and it's like, where are you joking, mate, or did that just fall so flat that you've just said it's a joke? And honestly, the Freakins legged them, didn't they? They just legged them on, literally, you could tell on day one the button was pressed, and it was just like, let's get this fella gone as soon as possible.
But they just want to believe, so being told, he just wanted to get Christmas out. He made the decision before they took over, he was gone, and he was gone within 4 weeks, but he wanted to not make it feel like we've come in and dropped the Al hatchet immediately. They wanted to let him sort of write his own thing, and he did, and he had listen, I wouldn't sit here and say anything different. He did have a difficult job to do because the club was in a bloody mess. But if he'd have walked away last summer, I'd have gone, fair play to you. But this half of the season, he was massively underperformed, and his demeanour was a disgrace, and the stuff that he had fans believing was crazy in the end. And I think most fans have come round now and sort of woke up and gone, actually, I don't know what he was going on about there, because people were worried, because we all should have been worried. We nearly lost our football club, so I understand why people were worried. But David Moyes come in and grabbed it up immediately, and obviously the Spurs game after the Villa game picked everyone up 3-0 up at half time. Should have scored 4 and 5. We then had a little Everton moment where we let them back into it to 3-2, and you come out nervous, but go away to Brighton, get a win, and then all of a sudden we were up and running, weren't we? We were on that. We were on the thing. Carlos Alcaraz came in January on loan. And obviously had an impact in his first game at the post, didn't he? But then Palace away gets an assist and the winner, and things started snowballing a bit, didn't he?
Well, obviously after the derby as well.
And then the Merseyside derby, the last ever one at Goodison, and I thought Everton played ever so well that night.
Well, it was really. It was obviously, it was a boss week in many ways, wasn't it? Because after we went out in the FA Cup and don't get me wrong, Bournemouth.
Yeah, people.
Bournemouth battered us that day, and it was like it wasn't really.
They deserved to win.
Yeah, there wasn't really issues. But then we played Liverpool. We obviously get the last minute equaliser, and it's just the last sort of great night at Goodison, isn't it? Because it was literally the last night at Goodison, but it was the last time, apart from the last day, that there was real focus. It meant something. The opposition, it meant something. So to get that goal and the way it happened was special, and it doesn't really matter what anyone else says or believes. It doesn't really matter to us. It was special. Of course, we get a last minute equaliser. It feels like a win. You know, it doesn't matter what, you know, they can say whatever they want, but if they had beaten us that night, that they would have held it over us forever, wouldn't they? Yeah. So it was important that we got that. And then we go to Palace, and again, you look at what we had. You know, Njai got injured, and the Corey been sent off, and you're looking at that game thinking, this is one of those where you've really got to do something tonight. And we, without playing amazingly, we get a win, you know, and we'd been pegged back to 1-1, then it felt like Palace were going to go on, but it was us who turned, and we win the game, and Alcaraz gets an assist and the goal. You think, and then on the Monday night was the first test event for the new stadium. And it just, by the time we got to that point, I remember I did Sky with Vinny outside, and I was just like, this is boss, isn't it? It's like, you get to go, the ones who were lucky today, get to go to the new stadium, get to see inside, the privilege of that. We've just beaten Palace 2 days before. We just had the mini, and everything just felt brilliant. For just the way it had been just a month earlier. Everything felt like no danger of relegation, and that was the night where you went, we can actually enjoy this now. We can enjoy this. We can enjoy Goodison. We can enjoy the rest of the season. We're going to this is going to be our new home. Obviously the Freakins were in by then, and I just felt that week like that come to the end of the week where we were like, we can start enjoying this now. This is great.
I meant to mention it as well, but we had the Leicester win, which was a big game. We had Leicester at home.
Well, the Leicester one was massive.
And people were going, well, you know, Leicester beat Everton, the right in and all that. And we come out, and for the second home game on the run, we were 3-0 up at half time.
Leicester
blitzed them.
The thing about the Leicester game, and I actually said those words myself, Leicester had beaten Spurs, hadn't they, the week before? And if they were to beat us, they would have gone 3 points behind us, I think. Yeah. And Leicester fans were very confident that they could come and
get something,
you know, because obviously going to Spurs and another away game, and they were really confident. We'll get something today. We'll get something, and the fact that we did blow them away, and we extended that gap was so important to the momentum of the season. Like, I know people turn around and go, we finished this, but just that day, that was the confirmation that day of like, we'll be fine. These are dreadful. The bottom three are bad, and we're just keeping that distance, keeping that nice, safe distance, so that when we do play our games, there's a little less pressure on them, and the manager can start. You know, if there's injuries or whatever, he can leave them out, and he can use the squad, and we can enjoy Goodison, and that's obviously that run of games. And I think obviously the Leicester home win was the last home win till we got to the Southampton game, wasn't it? So that showed. I mean, the away form was amazing, but like that showed you how important that game was.
Well, I mean, that day was fantastic. It was a tough game. We battered them. We obviously had the quickest ever goal, didn't we, in the Premier League, the Corey, and we put 4 past them. We could have got more. We blitzed them. You know, I mean, that was the day that people sort of realised that my prophecy from September that the promoted teams wouldn't get 30 points. No, I think people walked out, didn't they, and sort of went, we are going to be all right now. And everyone relaxed. We had United at home, and we 2-0 up, and we should have closed that out. That was an easy game. That could have well been a 4-0, and we blew it. But away, they were absolutely brilliant, weren't we? And Jai had really come to the, you know, playing a bit more freedom till he got injured against Liverpool. But David Moyes was able to get results away, and Brentford away, you know, Beto was in that hot run of form, but he had a bad night that night in front of goal. Otherwise, we'd have probably won that one as well. And we just seemed to be ticking.
Well, we were ticking over, weren't we? Because that's when we hit, like, what you would say was like a Dyche run of form, wasn't it? We were just picking up draws, and it looked good almost from the outside. I mean, we spun this one a little bit, not we as in, but everyone spun it. You know, 1 defeat in X amount of games, and we were scoring in every game, and it was like almost like the squad had been stretched no Njai in the team. The squad had been stretched to the point where it was like there's no more.
Don't forget we lost Calvert-Lewin and Mangala.
Yeah.
Mangala was the season ender. That's at Brighton. Calvert-Lewin come back in May.
Yeah.
And this was January when we lost him at Brighton. So the manager, Njai then was out for 6 weeks.
We
So
had Harrison on one side, Lindstrom on the other.
Yeah.
So we're relying on Beto to score the goals as well, and he did, luckily enough.
Brozier was
But it was
out,
like the squad was so stretched, but we were picking up these points, and as you said, we went to Brentford 1-0 down, and we should have won that. But we were going to the end, and I remember I said this a couple of times at the end of that game. I was like, if we lose this game, I'll be disappointed we've lost, but at the same time, we were like, we were fucking going for this. We were trying to win this game.
Yeah.
You know, Man United were really unlucky because 70 minutes, and then it was Ashley Young going off injured, wasn't he? Was it Ashley Young going off injured? Who went off injured?
I can't remember, but he got a free kick that he should never have got, and he scored a free kick from it. That was the frustration.
Oh no, was that the game Lindstrom went off injured?
No, it was Lindstrom went off. Young came on. Sorry, after half time.
Yeah, it was Lindstrom who went off.
He was stretching,
and it sort of changed the game a little bit for us because we were starting to get stretched.
The dog who got on the ball a bit more.
Wolves we went to, and it was like Wolves had to win it, and we didn't really have to win it, and we took the lead with the hottest combination in town, Lindstrom to Harrison. You know, West Ham, we get a last-minute equaliser, so again, it's like that feel-good factor of Jake O'Brien gets the goal, and then obviously it was like, then there was like 2.5 weeks till the next game, and we had the second test event in that. Loads more people got to go and see the ground, and then we went to Anfield and really should have got something on the game.
We should have. We have a goal disallowed by a millimetre. We hit a post with a millimetre the other side. It goes in. Okay, Liverpool score, which, you know, not a great goal from our perspective, but we then come back with Arsenal at the weekend and we're behind and we equalise and we get a draw, and it was that, wasn't it?
Let's not forget, we were going up against essentially the top 5 from when we started the run. It, you know, wasn't the top 5 by when we played each one of them, but, you know, Arsenal and Jai comes back, he gets the penalty, you know, controversial or not. Then we go to Forest, and that was like the one.
Third.
That's the one where, like, Forest, you know, for me, I was like, this is the game. The most everyone else is, but Forest are going to really be up for it. And the game plan was absolutely spot on. Again, it's like the 94th minute.
We were superb at Forest, though.
To give the Corey the fastest ever goal and the latest ever goal for Everton. So it was like we were brilliant. It was like if we don't win this game, I'm going to be devastated because we have done these today. We do get the goal, and then obviously, so it's like the lowest point was the back-to-back games, City and the Chelsea game. City, we never at the races really.
But we lost Tarkowski.
No, I know.
I think if he doesn't go off, it ends 0-0.
But what I mean is, I just think
we didn't play well.
And then when we played Chelsea the week after, and we gave up a stupid goal, and it was almost like.
Sanchez made a couple of saves.
But it was like the flip-flops on. And then it was like, then it's all focus on Goodison, isn't it? The last 2 games, Ipswich and Leicester, and all Southampton, and that's all the focus then is like on those games. It was more like just ticking games off then for that game. And the Ipswich game is disappointing. You're obviously 2-0 up. They scored a worldie. We don't turn up second half, which was really disappointing. And you know, Hayes gets the equaliser, and I know for a lot of people that was their last game, Goodison, and I felt really sorry for those people. And it was so flat at the end, and it just didn't feel right. And then again you're thinking, I think that sparked the thing in people going, it better not be like that, that. And I think Moyes might have felt like that. And the following week we go to Fulham, and you know, the great time was had.
It was. No, we went to Fulham then 3 games at the end of the season. I remember John Blaine saying, why don't we just win all 3? And we were like, Fulham away, Newcastle away. It was like if we could get 5 points, we finished really strongly. But we were brilliant. You know, we went behind at Fulham. We didn't play very well first half, but really impressed with Moyes for that second half, that we come out and it's 1-1 at half time. He'd come out second half and he just made 2 attacking changes at 1-1 and went for it, and he won 3-1. And then the Southampton game, I mean, that obviously the last ever game at Goodison Park, the emotion, everything around that was incredible. And it was getting the job done that day, wasn't it? And we got the job done, and we had a victory that you know, we got the 2 goals and win the game, and that was so emotional, but such a good send-off compared to where it was looking like at Christmas, wasn't it?
Yeah. No, it was special, wasn't it? Because we can enjoy it. We enjoyed the day. But with a manager and maybe some players that were worthy of the occasion as well. Manager who definitely gets it. Not sure if the other fella would have, what his part would have been in the day, because he would have been leaving as well. But a manager who was like, you know, part of the culture of that place. Whether people like it or not, David Moyes has been in Evertonians' lives a lot more than Howard Kendall or a Joe Royle or whoever else you want to talk about. You know, you're talking about the last few generations of Evertonians. It doesn't matter what he hasn't won or whatever. This fella's part of Everton's.
It's like 12 years of people's lives.
This fella's part of Everton's like culture for most of us. You know, and having him back leading the ship, especially when it's like, you know, American owners and the problems we've had with owners in the past, needs that sort of cultural stamp. Well, he's understanding who we are.
Exactly.
And with Seamus as well.
He's got to lead them though, hasn't he? He's got to instill on them exactly what Everton is as well, and what the standards should be, because they're learning as well. And the Southampton game, he got the job done. Obviously, I wanted the 3rd at the Gladys Street end.
Of course. You
know, and especially because what had happened with Ipswich as well. Like, do not throw this away. But we didn't, and obviously we had all the ex-players, was fantastic, and it was a lovely hot day, and it was a great day. It was an emotional day. We've seen the bus welcome and everything. It was unbelievable. You know, what a fantastic day. And then we go off to Newcastle, which, but you know, I'd said to you in the build-up to the Newcastle game, obviously I was going away on holiday for I wasn't going to see the Newcastle game. It was like the season ended last week for me. Goodison, the Southampton game's the end of the season. Newcastle needing that victory to make sure in the Champions League. Everton going up there, and it was like, you know, there's no Branthwaite. We lost Branthwaite through injury in the Southampton game, and it was like, it's Jake O'Brien and Keane at centre-back and this, that and the other. And yeah, again, another test. I know you were keeping me updated throughout the game and stuff. A testimony to the job David Moyes done, that we went to Newcastle, who were going for that Champions League place. I think they started the day in 3rd or 4th, and we go and beat them. You know, Charlie Alcaraz scores a very Tim Cahill-like header. We score 1, we could have had more. No, Jordan Pickford's made a couple of good saves as well, but Nick Pope's had to make saves for them. And to go and win and finish the season with 3 wins.
I think brilliant. I think what happened, like we said before, was there come a point. Obviously, David Moyes, when he came in, he said, you know, I'm embarrassed to see where this football club is. I'm embarrassed to be the manager of a football club that is where it is. We shouldn't be here. And then he's obviously spoken afterwards, and he was like, I couldn't see where, even though I was the manager, I didn't know where the wins were going to come from. I think he got to a point where it was just like, let's just go and play every game of football in a positive manner. Let's set up in a positive way, and let's take teams on and let them worry about, like, and I don't think that comes from, I think we've been so used to worrying about every single thing at this football club in the last 3 or 4 years that every moment becomes, you can't enjoy anything, can you? You couldn't enjoy any moments. If you're winning, you're feeling not winning, you know, and all those things. You're not enjoying it. And for him, he probably looked at it, and once we got past that point, which was quite early, which was good, and once he got past that, he was probably thinking, I can sort of dictate how. So you did have a spell where it was all draws, and it was just like, and then there's a few like, oh, this is not much different from Dyche, is it? But it was different, because it's, you can,
well, we scored goals for the start.
You can enjoy it, can't you? You can enjoy it. You're watching better football. And I think what like the Fulham result was, and like the Newcastle result was, like, the pressure is being flipped on the other teams. They're the ones who've got to figure out how to beat you. I just think like those 2 results are a good sign of what, and a lot of those results are a good sign of what's going forward. The away results have been fantastic. Is you don't have to, hopefully, don't have to worry about what you've been worrying about. off the field sorted, we're moving to a new ground. Like, think of just like that in the back of your mind as well about leaving Goodison Park and wanting to leave in the best way possible and being a little bit worried about like, oh, we don't want to lose too many games and can we stay unbeaten and all that kind of, and even the last game of the season, it doesn't mean anything, the Southampton game, but you know it does mean something because it's like, and all those things that have been like, and it's like there's a clean slate now, and it's can we just go on and enjoy it? And I think that's what David Moyes gives us a sense of towards the end of the season of we can go back to enjoying this, go back to enjoying watching football, and it not be this thing of
the be all.
Will we exist? Will we exist as a football club? And I think that's the most important thing about him coming back.
Let's be honest, we've been on the rope since Carlo walked out, haven't we? That was the last, you know, he left. We got Rafa Benitez in, and straight away we were on the back foot.
I don't know about being on the ropes. I think it's been the slowest 10 count ever.
You know what I mean?
That
sort of started it 4 years ago. That started it. We seen things slowing down. We seen good players who created goals not leaving the football club, and then the year later we lose with Charles, and then and it's just felt like from getting from pillar to post. And I think David Moyes coming back, we were on our knees. We'd had half a season, we'd won 3 games of football. We hadn't scored in 9 out of 11 games when he come in, and to finish the season on 48 points is incredible, really.
Yeah. And it's not just that as well, it's the weekly like press conferences where he'd be like saying, he's not good enough, this team's not an Everton team, or this team's not good enough, or but not in like a way the other fella did it. In a way that was like, if you want to stay in my team, you're going to have to be good. But then there's the little things he dug in. Like he started, what was the one where he was asked about Mo Salah and he was just like, what? And then there was another one where he was asked about like free transfers and he was like, oh, I heard there's a few free transfers gone the other. And like he just like started, it's like, we haven't had a manager taking the piss out of other people for ages. This is great. This is great.
What about the one where we'd won a few games and the fella said, you've got to be careful that people of Everton are like getting carried away with the wins, and he was just like, how about getting carried away with wins? People have had a go with Everton for too long, how about it? And the reporters sort of just went, yeah. And what about, even though we think Will Rooney's brilliant, but even that one the other week when it was like, why are you bringing a negative question into this? I know about Goodison and all, and I think Will's great, he asks great questions. Good questions. But the manager's just putting it straight back on.
The last game at Goodison, we're not getting worried about that.
What about it? It was like, no, look, this is what it is, or he'll say, I think that's a really poor question. And he's in control of everything, but what he's done is he's talked about standards, he's talked about where Everton should be. We haven't heard that for a good few years, so let's enjoy that. And he's got to prove himself again, of course he has, because it's over a season and it's how you do. But what he's done in half a season, people went on about a new manager bounce for the first 3 or 4 games. Well, he's had that half a season and he's absolutely smashed it. If he had the points return double for next season, Everton will get into Europe or be very close to it. If he did that again over a full season, what he's got, it's a new season, but it's a new start. And I think, listen, we come to the end of the season, we're still waiting for, at the time of recording this, for confirmation over people like Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Seamus Coleman, what they're going to be doing. Particularly Seamus will be staying, but I imagine in just a low-level playing capacity. But we can look forward now, can't we, to the new era, if you like, where the future looks stable with the Friedkin group in charge. We're moving to a fantastic new stadium, and it certainly feels a lot brighter than it did 6 months ago. And I think overall Everton have finished 13th, the highest we finished for a few seasons, and a positive end to what was a difficult season in the first part of it anyway. Well,
the irony is that we finished on 48 points, which is exactly the amount of points we won last season, and it's like the negativity that had been brought into the club and the dumbing down of the football club and the just that sort of mindset of everything's going to be hard and everything's going to be tough. We said before, we thought this season would be very similar to last season, because last season, without the 10 points deductions, it wasn't 10 points in the end, but the way it factored out, it was like that it felt tougher than actually what we were seeing on the pitch, because we would have been well clear of it. And yet the manager who was still at the football club sort of decided, well, we're here now, but I'm going to take us down here for some reason. And all then David Moyes just come in and just gone, no, you're all right, you're fine, but I'll put you back up there, and then we're just going to keep that going up. So that's all we can do now. We're just going to build on what we've got. It's massive changes, okay, but it's weird, we're sitting here and we still sort of aren't feeling those changes, and it will be weird by the time, because we walk into that new stadium.
Yeah.
And that'll be the weird thing. I think that that's when it will hit loads of people. By the way, the Goodison is when you walk into that stadium and not Goodison Park, and that's when it might become real. But I'll tell you what, if we can get a few new signings in there as well, it'll be very, very real. So
yeah, definitely. There you go. That's our season review. We'll obviously be going through the players. We'll do a review of the players as well. Let us know what you think in the comments. What about the season overall? What were your thoughts and anything we spoke about? And how happy are you that David Moyes is back at the helm? Make sure you like, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't. See you later.